Mayor Denner, the public is in.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Let me get that out. I call this meeting to order of the City Council for the City of Grosse Pointe Park. Clerk Blayhut, please call the roll.
Councilmember Rayland,
Present.
Reed,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
McConnell, Robson,
Here.
Hodges,
Here.
Blewett,
Here.
and Mayor Denner.
Here, thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
And to the
republic
republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get into the agenda, I just wanted to say a couple of things. First, welcome to all that are attending this meeting. Our city, our residents, and our businesses continue to work through the daunting task of recovering from the storm of June 25th, 26th, and the subsequent storm events. I want to thank everyone who participated in the town hall last Thursday. I think it provided a forum for important dialogue and community engagement. I also appreciate the loss and challenges faced by all our community as we continue to work together to recover and initiate plans for continuing improvements. The city manager will provide an update on the city's progress and plans in his manager's report. We also have the obligation to continue to conduct other city business. As such, our agenda tonight focuses on other city topics. And I again want to thank you all for attending. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Council, you have the consent agenda before you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Rayland,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. Next item is public comment agenda items. I'd like to, before I turn it over to the administration, remind the public that this is for agenda items. And this evening we have a fairly short agenda, although it'll take a little while to get through, where primarily it's a public hearing related to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. And that public hearing has in fact its own public comment section. We also have a redistricting resolution. So if there are any public comments on agenda items, I ask the administration to read them or call on verbal comments.
Mayor Denner, I have no written public comments, so I'll ask Leah if there's any spoken public comments for the agenda items tonight. Be mindful as well, as the mayor stated, if there is questions or comments regarding the Drinking Water Revolving Fund, that has its own separate public comment period. Thank you.
Mayor Denner and City Manager Seisland, I have no public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. That closes public comment agenda items. And we'll move right into the manager's report. City Manager Seisland.
Thank you, Mayor Denner, members of City Council and residents of Grosse Pointe Park. So I'm going to give a couple brief updates on activities within the city. The TIFA is in development of a residential and business improvement grant that we'll be sharing at the next Tax Increment Finance Authority meeting. That'll be available for further discussion and approval by the TIFA board. DTE, since the storm, I requested DTE to leave Grosse Pointe Park due to the size of their vehicles, needing room for garbage pickup and et cetera, unless it's for dire infrastructure. DPW and I will discuss with them further once we feel we're in a comfortable stage that they can come back in town. And as well, you may have noticed that there are large poles within some of the easement area. This is for a pole and T-arm replacement program that is going to be done after the tree trimming, which they are almost complete within Grosse Pointe Park. Recycling, Grosse Pointe Farms, Shores, City and Park. We sent on a request for proposals looking for recycling services. We have one pre-bid applicant at this time. And however, though, due to the storm, an extension has been granted for that request for proposals. An update regarding the Public Works building. The city is working with Huntington Bank on a section of easement for a public sidewalk along the DPW building at this time. You may have noticed at City Hall, there is a large crane that is in between the pump station and City Hall. Right now, our contractor is doing roof tear off and replacement. They'll move to window construction next. So our staging areas are between City Hall and the pump station, and we'll be in the back of the parking lot. Next will be HVAC, ceiling, and lighting upgrades will be going out soon. You may have noticed on the Jefferson traffic islands that after a walkthrough with Chief Gerald and Director of Public Works, Pat Thomas, within the areas that you would turn on Jefferson, you would notice, I'm not very good at this, but large bushes, I can't recall what they are, but we have been trimming some of those back and or removal. And then we had the storm hit. So, once we're done cleaning up there, we'll look to remove some of those further so that it's safer for residents and, people to be going by as they're driving. So this was very important to do. Patterson Park parking lot. Patterson Park parking lot is scheduled for resurfacing within the next few weeks. We had expected them to be very soon, but however, due to the storm, we asked them to delay further. Street resurfacing, we've approached Cadillac Asphalt for quotes regarding street and alley resurfacing. And those numbers will be coming within the next few days for the city for review for the upcoming paving season, which we will update further of which alleys and streets those will be. And regarding the storm that happened on June 25th, 26th, an update. Round one of trash was cleaned up on Saturday, touching every street in Grosse Pointe Park. We're going to have round two starting today, or we did today, and we expect trash to be picked up within about a week and a half. And so we're keeping all of our contractors and DPW still at work. I'd like to thank DPW for their hard work on that. Pat, do you have any updates regarding further regarding trash pickup or hazardous waste for the council and public?
Yes, Mr. Seisland, just to let you know that they actually finished up today with the second round of rubbish pickup. Everything's been completed as of today. Had 5 contractors in. At the end of this, I had to let a couple go because they're running into each other, but everything has been completed as far as the pickup. So round 2 has been done. Right now, we're going to probably start working on paint pickup. DPW will probably end up doing that. We'll bring it down to the park. And again, we will call the company, the environmental company that's handling ERG, will come in and repackage again when they bring another 50-footer in. But other than that, though, everything has been picked up for the second time. It was all done today for the second round.
Thank you, Pat. As well, a couple other updates for the residents and council. Grosse Pointe Park, is with this event, we've been talking with the other Grosse Pointes in the city of Detroit in regards to sharing data and resources as we move forward with next steps. One of the things that we discussed at our town hall is that this is going to take a collaborative effort among communities, in regards to, finding areas for relief and improving our systems. The engineers at OHM Advisors are continuing their work on this storm analysis. They're looking into options for future relief, which they will be working with myself and the Public Works as we reapproach Eagle in the state of Michigan. One of the programs that we would like to introduce soon, in regards to, there's been a lot of discussion of the catch basins. What I would like to do is set up a voluntary program. It's called Adopt a Catch Basin program. And as part of this, what we'll be asking and detailing further is that, if there's an area, DPW certainly is their job to help, clean the catch basins and everything from the top. But if everybody can, pitch in with a little bit and adopt a catch basin, We would certainly appreciate that for cleaning up and, making that your catch basin for cleanliness. So we'd appreciate it. However, don't paint it or anything. This is just more of helping to clean up. So sorry about that. Street sweeping, Public Works will be starting street sweeping soon, obviously to clean up everything from the storm and looking for catch basin cleanup. As well, last Friday, FEMA was within Grosse Pointe City and Grosse Pointe Park. They toured several streets. They asked residents 5 questions regarding what they had received. And so we're hoping for further updates from the county regarding that process as we move forward through FEMA. And as well, I know Michigan State Police will be following up with us as well regarding this FEMA. There's been a lot of discussion, and we certainly want to help out, both of landlords and tenants within Grosse Pointe Park. The building department and the code enforcement have the authority to require compliance of the Michigan Residential Code and the Property Maintenance Code. All habitable structures are required to be maintained in a safe and sanitary condition. We are currently in development of communication that will be issued to let tenants and landlords know if any are having flood-related issues, that they please contact the building department at 313-822-6200 or building@grossepointepark.org or code enforcement at grossepointepark.org as well. What we will look to do is schedule a site visit, and we'll address that with the property owner. As well, we have listed on the city website resources available for tenants to contact the state, including legal help. And so a couple of the areas within our zoning compliance that we can touch based upon is clearing debris from the property, ensuring that water heaters and furnaces are functioning, and sanitization of flooded basements. So I would highly encourage those tenants to please reach out to the building department, where we will do as best as we can. Keep in mind, though, we do have one part-time code enforcement and a part-time building official. So, please use documents and keep records if several of these instances are not in compliance. As well, what the city looked to do for providing relief and helping out with this, we reached out to some of the largest property holders in the city, such as D-Land Group, Green Space Holdings, and others, which manage many residential rental units in the park, including at the business district as well. These groups are currently remediating the damage that was sustained by their buildings and the loss to tenants. I reached out to ask that they help soften the burden on these tenants and work with them through rent abatements, temporary relocations, and other means of relief due to the severe damage, and insurers providing little to no coverage for renters and business tenants. In one case, Greenspace actually is currently in the process of helping a commercial tenant get back up and running in a pop-up space on Kirchville Avenue over at the barber shop, while flood repair and remediation are completed on the tenant's permanent space. This is a time for all pointers to band together to help each other, and we hope that other landlords will consider rent abatements and implement other creative ideas to assist their residential and business tenants as well. With that said, Mayor Denner, that is my written report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Councilmember McConnell?
Hi, well, this is actually for Pat. Can you just clarify the first question? I have a few. Whether the paint cans, we're picking them up or they're just bringing them to Windmill Point Park? Because it sounded like both are options. So can you just please clear that up for me?
We're going to actually go around and pick up a lot of the cans. People have been very gracious through all these bad times, as far as I'm concerned, have been bringing them down there, but we will be picking them up at the curb starting tomorrow.
Okay. The second question is, had a resident ask me about their garbage can. Apparently, some people lost their garbage can or was destroyed during the storm event. So I don't know if there's any allowances we can make for them, but I just wanted to bring that up in the event that we can.
Yeah, just as long as they can email me at
Okay.
tomp@grossepointepark.org. I
Okay.
can get them in touch with Courtney up front.
Okay, great. And then the third question is, and I don't know if this is the right place, but I know that, and I talked to you about this briefly, city manager, about the rescue funds, if there's any portion of that that can be used to mitigate or offset any of the storm issues Or for Pat, if there's some, I guess, short-term remedy that we think would be useful in this instance that we could use those dollars for.
Thank you, Councilmember McConnell. That's something that we'll have to look at further and see within the guidelines within the American Rescue Plan funding, if that's certainly an opportunity, but it's certainly something that I think we should leave on the table if we can.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Councilmember Fluid.
Thanks. First of all, I want to remember to thank our DPW again. I can't imagine the conditions that you all were working under in the last couple of weeks, and around the clock. It was hot, it was rainy. So I know all of us appreciate the work that you did, and residents in the midst of their misery, they recognize that as well. So thank you for that. The only question I really had for the city manager was regarding making sure that landlords are fulfilling their responsibilities. I know there was some discussion of perhaps instituting fines, as Detroit is doing. I don't know if that's being explored. And the second part of that is what I've heard a couple of residents say is that their landlords are indicating that even if everything is working, they don't necessarily need to sanitize the basement. So what kind of proof are you going to be looking for to ensure that there's not going to be mold and that the landlords have actually done all the remediation that they need to do?
So in regards to, I'll go with the last. So, really it's going to be up to the building official and or code enforcement to see in regards to sanitizing. Obviously that if there's a smell or they can see that there's an issue going on, they will be looking to, have those landlords comply. As part of the review, if they are found in non-compliance, we do have the ability to issue tickets that would go to those landlords, for further compliance. Did you have one other question? Or maybe clarification?
I think you clarified what I was asking, but I guess I would like to see it made clear that if landlords haven't already done some remediation, we would like to see something indicating that it was done, whether it's pictures or something. I think we actually need to document what it is that we're expecting landlords to do. And, I think all of this needs to be written down and documented so that renters know what they're entitled to, landlords know what they're required to do, and then we know what those consequences are going to be if they're not followed.
What I can do, Councilmember Fluid, is I'll get together with our building official and City Attorney Howlett to see if, there's some cases where we can add that, because right now, we're just going upon based what's within the MRC property maintenance code and our zoning. And if those gentlemen think that, we can add a couple more things, to be able to help them, we will absolutely do so. So after tonight, I'll be getting with both of them and see what we can do to help. And if we can document that, adding on there, and as like I said before, take pictures, document, do what you can, but we'll certainly try and detail as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. And then one more thing was what about vacant properties? Are we hoping that neighbors will report whether trash has been put to the curb? Are we going to be asking to go in and inspect those? I think those are an issue as well.
Yeah, certainly. So, what I would certainly ask is that if, residents are, know of a couple properties that they think no one has been there hasn't been any instance, please contact the building department. We do have some information that we're able to call them, or if there's, no answer, we'll tag them. Usually after you tag somebody, they're pretty aware to contact the city. And so I would ask for those to please do so. And I do have to thank a couple residents that have already reached out to the city. We've had a couple people already go out there and check, and sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. But I would ask if you could please email the building department or let us know. We would greatly appreciate it.
Do we have a running list of vacant properties that we can follow up on?
We do have a running list of a couple that we know of. However, as part of this, If we find that there's maybe some that we don't have on our list, obviously those are as well going to have to, depending upon if we find that they are non-compliance with our vacant property registration, they'll also have to register their property. So in
Right.
this case, it's really those that we don't know of.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, is that it? Oh, no. Mayor Pro Tem Robson.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. Following up on Councilmember Fluette, is there a phone number? We might have a lot of tenants listening tonight. Is there a phone number that residents and tenants can call to report an indifferent landlord?
I would have them reach out to the main landline and ask for the building department, where it'll be forwarded to Diane McConaughey or one of our other employees at the city hall. That number is 313-822-6200. Or if you're more comfortable, you can certainly email the city. We do have the building@grosspointpark.org, or as well at the bottom of our website, there is a contact us page, and that I would ask if you do the check down box to please go ahead and add your comments to there. One thing I forgot to mention, and I apologize for this, we are also in the development of right now, our city website as it's forming, and we're getting more information, try to make it more user friendly. Residents we do have a paper form for the PA 222 form. We do have a PDF form as well. We are more than likely going to finish it up this week, but we're working on a fillable, and this is the only word I can use, submittable form to the city. So what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to type up everything on the PA 222 form. We'll actually have a Dropbox in a way where you can add your pictures and everything. And so as soon as that is done this week, we'll be letting the residents know and issuing that out through city communications. So just another way to make this a little easier and help out.
Okay, thank you. Now, getting back to our rental dwellings and our vacant properties, most of our landlords are outstanding, very conscientious. But what I'm concerned about is the perhaps half dozen rental dwellings and vacant dwellings where quite obviously the landlords or the owners have not been attentive. I know of one address at 1141 Weyburn. To the city administration's credit, they have begun some action in recent weeks and today. These people need to get a wake-up call. Our resources are very light at the moment. I noticed, as we all did, that the city of Detroit, through executive action, is going to fine, starting July 20th, landlords that don't do a remediation $250 a day. I don't know that we have that executive power, but we do have to have a clear, quick strategy to address these 6 or 8 or 10 scofflaws, starting with 1141 Weyburn. It is owned by 1141 Weyburn LLC. That's the listed owner. Has a post office box in St. Clair Shores. I don't know what this guy is trying to accomplish. The place has been vacant since 2019. And it seems like he could care less about the condition of the dwelling. That said, and I'll be quiet shortly. In the short term, if we could get a search warrant to that dwelling, we have done that in the past for problematic housing. So I would suggest that if that is possible, the police department might be able to focus on that. But to me, this is a public health issue. And it has to be addressed. Again, our resources are very light. They're stretched out. But I'm tired of these 6 or 8 or more landlords and the vacant property owners. We have to bop them on the head. And, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. Just to follow up with the city manager and possibly the city attorney, the city manager, you just brought up the claim form, and in my discussions with residents, that's causing a lot of confusion and stress. And some lawyers are starting to weigh in on some of the Facebook groups, which, so the questions are coming. One of the questions is how much information that has to be provided on the form, and I know we have a detailed level of information, which is more than the statute requires, because some residents simply don't have the information yet. And then another question is, so maybe a level of clarification there. Another question, and I know we've addressed this on our website, but it'd be nice to hear it here, is do we have to submit, the residents are asking, do I need to submit the GLEWA form? And I know at least in Wayne County, they were saying you just submit your local form, which would be our Grosse Pointe Park form. So there's some confusion there. And then the third would be FEMA. And I was on one of the Wayne County calls, and first of all, FEMA has not taken action yet. I mean, they're investigating, but my understanding is that FEMA will be a completely separate claim process if and when they accept the designation. So those are some of the questions I'm hearing from residents, and it's causing some confusion and some stress in addition to the remediation they're doing at their home. So if you can, either you or the city attorney can address that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'll take the last question, and then I'll let Jake answer the others. In regards to FEMA, yes, you are right, Councilmember Reed. From our discussions we've had with Wayne County, if we are designated FEMA relief, there will be a separate FEMA form that will be available for residents and businesses to fill out. Then Jake, if you want to take the two other questions.
Yeah, as it relates to the form, that form, one, residents have 45 days from the date of the event. So there should be no time pressure in filling that out. Our philosophy on that was essentially to be as helpful to the residents as possible. Yes, the statute requires a very minimum amount of information, but the less information you provide, the less likely you are to be reimbursed. And that form is going to be used for the city's insurance carrier, GLWA's insurance carrier, et cetera. So the idea was the more information that people could provide in terms of illustrating their damages, the better chance they would have of, one, getting reimbursed, and two, not having to do it over and over again. So one of the concerns was, if you could technically comply with the statute by providing your name, your address, and saying that we lost some things in our basement, and that would be compliant. But in order to get reimbursed for that, the insurance company, any litigation, or any opportunity to get reimbursed for that would require additional information. And so our hope was, by giving them that form, letting the residents know they had 45 days to fill it out, and giving them the opportunity to be as detailed as they could be. It's not required, but the more detailed they are, the better off they're going to be. And our firm has done these cases before, and the more detailed people are in their responses, the better off they're going to be at the end of the day, whether it's FEMA, insurance proceeds, state proceeds, county proceeds, lawsuits, whatever the case might be. And so that was the philosophy behind the form. So, I've seen those Facebook posts as well. The ones I've seen are plaintiffs' lawyers that are trying to drum up support for lawsuits against the city. And so they are somewhat critical of the form, I suppose. But that form is more, yes, it's more than compliant with the statute, because our hope is when residents fill that out, and again, they have 45 days from the date of the event to do it, the more detailed they are, the better off they're going to be down the road in terms of being made whole for their losses. And so that was something very important to us. That was a form we put together. Myself and a partner at Bodman put that together on the Saturday of the flooding. We used information from Oakland County, Great Lakes Water Authority, and many, many other forms. So it is technically correct that that is more information than you need by statute. But frankly, the more information people are able to provide, the better off they're going to be down the road. If they're not comfortable, even within that 45-day window of providing that information, get the form in the best you can. And that's not to say there won't be an opportunity to be more detailed later. But the more detail that's provided, the more information that we have, that's going to help the residents. It's going to help the city get reimbursed from the responsible parties. And then to address the issue in terms of the Great Lakes Water Authority and who you should file your claim with, the statute is very clear that if they file it locally, the burden then shifts to the city to provide that information to whom it believes are the responsible parties. So I suppose if you're a resident and you want to be hyper careful, you can file it with whomever you want. But if you file it with Grosse Pointe Park then will be seeking reimbursement from entities that it believes are responsible, and your claim under the statute at that point is protected. So you don't lose out. If it turns out that Great Lakes Water Authority is responsible, you don't, as a resident, lose out on your 222 claim because you filed it with Grosse Pointe Park. You are protected in that regard under the statute. So yes, we're asking for some additional information, which again, I think is a benefit to the residents, but I would say to them, do the best you can and make sure the most important part is get it in within the 45 days. That's a hard deadline. So whatever you can do, get it in. If you have to supplement it later, that's fine. And then as it relates to either GLWA or other entities, as long as you file with the park, you are protected. So I hope that answers the questions. If it does not, just let me know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, Vikas.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Two things real quick. So we keep saying 45 days. Are we going August 10th? I know is a safe date. I think the last date may be August 12th because it starts the day after the event is what I was reading. But if we can start using the actual date of the deadline, that'll help some residents as well. I don't know if you guys have that set or not, but I know August 10th is with the 44 days. I don't know if the 45th day is actually going to be 11th or 12th, but just for the residents to know, I think August 10th is a safe deadline, whether it's 44 days or 45 days. The next thing is for Mr. Thomas. Let's say there's a resident that's still cleaning up and they need a round 3 pickup. What's the process to get a round 3 of debris pickup for them?
Like I say, we will be going through the city again, and we will have eyes on with all the DPW workers. So that's not going to be a problem.
Awesome.
If any
Thanks
issues
so much.
come up, they can always get a hold of us by email or my phone number, which is out there also, 313-822-5100. Should not be a problem, but we will have eyes out there and we will be looking.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that closes our manager's report, and it was a good discussion, good questions. Thank you, City Manager Seisland. We'll move on to committee and commission reports. I have the Sustainability Committee met since our last meeting, and Councilmember Fluid is the chair. Do you have a report for us?
I do, thank you. Yeah, we met on June 16th, and I will try to be brief here. RRS, which is a company out of Ann Arbor, is providing some consulting services right now on how we can improve recycling. The city manager has been working with them, and they may be able to provide us some other services in the future. We have a city electrician who is looking at some options for replacing some of our streetlights with LED. The city manager is looking at starting that process through Tifa on Charlevoix and Kercheval, and it's going to cost probably around $1,000 per lamp to do that, but that's one of the projects he's looking at doing through Tifa. We explored composting a little bit. A couple of us were in touch with Midtown Composting, which seems to be a service that a lot of our residents are using, that they're very happy with. We're not probably going to be composting ourselves. That's something that we don't really have the capacity to do, but the city manager is going to be in touch with Midtown to see if it's going to be good. They've already said they're not going to be available to give us any kind of a group rate, but we want to see if we're happy with them, and we actually want to start promoting that as something that we would suggest that residents do. Our city forester also joins us for our sustainability meetings, Brian Coulter, and he gave us a little bit of an overview of leaf composting, which I didn't realize, but it was pretty amazing. So, we're all aware that our leaves get picked up automatically, which is a really nice perk to living here. And Brian Coulter was telling us that they go, the contractor that picks them up takes them out to his acreage. I believe he says this is someone who has 40,000 acres. He turns them over, he takes care of them, and they actually come back to us, and we use them as topsoil, which it's a good renewable practice. I didn't know we did that. I thought that was pretty cool. We talked a little bit about using sustainability as part of a procurement policy, and what the city manager suggested doing was actually just inserting a paragraph into a procurement policy rather than having a separate sustainable procurement policy. We actually don't have a procurement policy per se, and that's something that he's working on. And so what he's going to be doing is, when he's working on that process, is that he includes something about us not necessarily giving preference, but taking that into consideration, where we would look at a company's environmental practices when we determine who to give a contract to. Obviously, that would only be one portion of the procurement policy, and price would still be a factor, but we want to add environmental practices to those considerations. The city manager and the assistant to the city manager have worked on adding a webpage to the city website that focuses on environmental best practices. That is up. I would like to flesh that out a little bit more. So that's still under development. And I just want to add as a footnote that sustainability is obviously going to dovetail with some of the things we're going to be talking about with flooding. When I went through the Eagle report that we're going to be talking about later, I certainly noticed the statistics on how much pavement we have in the city. And so I would like to start looking at permeable pavement being used as an alternative. It's going to be more expensive, but when we start talking about paving, for instance, it was in the city manager's report that we're going to be resurfacing at Patterson soon. I would like to start having that discussion. I think one of the things we have to look about when we're talking about flooding is where the runoff is coming from. And, this is going to be a huge discussion. We're going to have a lot of options. We're going to have a lot to think about. But I think permeable pavement needs to be one of those things that we start exploring, and sustainability is certainly willing to help with that. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. The only other committee that I had meeting since our last meeting was the Public Service Committee, which met on June 15th. And the primary focus of that committee meeting was in fact the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which is the topic of our public hearing. So I won't repeat that, but a presentation very similar to what is going to be presented tonight under that topic and that public hearing was presented and discussed by the Public Service Committee. Did I miss anyone? Those are the only ones I know of that met during the time since our last meeting in June. Okay, thank you. That closes committee and commission reports, and move on to unfinished business. We have no agenda items under unfinished business, but as is usual, if council has any comment related to unfinished business, now would be the time. Councilmember Relin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager Nick, I'm wondering if there's any more update on the hiring of a DDA and TIFA director. Last month, you gave us a little update that you're going to put out the job description, just seeing where we're at.
Funny you mentioned that. And the reason why I say it's funny is because we just posted it today, actually. So good eye. But yeah, we'll be putting it on the city website as well. It's currently on the, it will be advertised MML tomorrow, Michigan Downtown Association, and then Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, with your baby coming soon, I know we need to give you some assistance and get some things off your plate. So that'll help a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Any other council comment? Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. A couple of items that got pushed or canceled because of the storm event are the Ordinance Review Committee. Will be working with city administration to reschedule that. There's some matters that we need to review. So I just wanted to bring that up as unfinished business. Also, the Marina Subcommittee, that committee meeting was canceled. We don't have it rescheduled yet, but I know it will be publicized on the city website when that happens. And I've also called for a communications committee meeting sometime. We probably meet twice a year, and we haven't met since January, so that will be coming up. And then I'm assuming this will go under unfinished business because it relates to the storm event, and I mentioned it last week at the town hall that I'm asking that we add a standing agenda item on water infrastructure and emergency planning and communication, that we keep those two on the forefront of our agenda for the time being. And we continue to talk about those and have action items around them as we work towards solutions on both of those areas.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fluid.
Something Councilmember McConnell had touched on that reminded me to ask was, we still haven't had that discussion about how we want to use that $1 million we're supposed to be getting in ARP funding. And I think we had, we discovered here, we all kind of have similar ideas about where we want it to go, but we do actually need to have that discussion and determine where that's going to be used. So when are we planning to do that?
I'll ask the city manager if he can tell us what the timing of that's likely to be. As you know, we've had sort of job one for the last 2 weeks, but City Manager Seisland.
Thank you, Mayor Denner and Councilmember Fluid. I would suggest, that we could actually add that as an agenda item for our August council meeting to further discuss where our priorities are. Obviously, I can't speak for all of council, but I think, there's probably some priorities shifted considering, from the events of a couple weeks ago. But I will add that as a agenda item for further discussion.
Thank you. And then I do have a couple of follow-up questions from the town hall. Would you rather do that now or under council comment and new business?
Let's do it now, and then, I'll do my best. And then obviously I have Pat Thomas and Patrick Droz who can assist me as well.
Okay, thank you. I feel like we're going to be talking about this and obviously in a lot of future meetings, and there are a lot of details to go over, but the first thing I wanted to ask about is if we could get any more clarification. When we had the town hall, we had another heavy rainstorm. It was a brief burst right as the town hall was beginning. And we actually had people texting and sending out messages like their basements were flooding again while we were meeting. Do we have any clarification as to why that was happening? Was it saturation or what?
I would say it's a little bit of saturation is certainly one of them. And then Pat Thomas, you had your hand up. I'll let you go ahead.
Yes, I did. I did get that complaint during the town hall meeting, which I wanted to run there actually, but of course I didn't. But I did reach out to the person who lived at, it was 1144 1144 Bishop, which I went out to that household the next day on Friday. When I went there, I walked around the house. I told her that I was coming to her house. She did have a lockbox. I walked into the house. Before I walked in there, I walked around the house as I normally do on houses that I'm looking at. And when I walked around, she had 4 downspouts connected. She had a backyard drain that was also connected to the storm line. So basically what happened there, when I went to the basement, I found that the basement did back up, but it was all on the storm side, because both the storm and the sanitary are separate in the house until they go out to the main line, which go right into a 6-inch lateral line into the main. So long story short, she did have a lot of issues. There were wood chips, pieces of wood and stuff like that in the basement itself. So she did back up, but when the water breached or crest over the top of where the basement actually went into the laundry room, all the water drained into the sanitary side. And when I took a flashlight and she had a camera on her, a video camera on her furnace, and I did point out exactly what the problem was. So yeah, she was the one that did say that she had like 2 or 3 inches in her basement, and basically it was her problem at the time.
Okay, I appreciate you going to her house and looking, but a lot of people had, a lot of people had repeat flooding. So, it happened much more quickly than it did, I think, on Friday night. So that's why I was wondering, how did it happen again so quickly? If we had any insight as to why it would happen again immediately. Obviously, it wasn't to the level that it was on the 26th, but it did happen again very, very quickly.
Yeah, again, I can reiterate on that also. There were a lot of houses back in 2016 that actually did have backup, but it was actually an internal issue, homeowner issues. So I'm not sure because none of them, I only got one address and that was it. Otherwise, I really would have been able to get out to look at these addresses.
On this, the city manager may be about to say the same thing, but I'd ask that any specific addresses that we know of that had that issue, if you can make sure that that DPW knows what they are, then we can look at those areas. They can look at those areas for possible remediation.
And so as well, to add with it, and I think what Councilmember Fluid was is inquiring of is, why did we receive, so there were some basements that had issues. Obviously, one is saturation. We, have had a significant amount of rain. So obviously surfaces that would normally dry, and receive that water, they're saturated. We did get almost an inch within, I think it was like 5 or 10 minutes. Which is a significant amount of rain, at that time as well. You do have that, as DPW has been going around cleaning up, they haven't been able to clean the streets. Catch basins are either clogged or they are dirty at this time. And so what we're going to have to do as part of this process is going through and clean that up. Pat Droz, do you have any other comment regarding that?
Yeah, I think Nick has mentioned regarding street flooding, just the fact that there is a lot of debris in the street that potentially could have caused some things. At the same time, the amount of volume that was flushed through the system on the 25th and 26th of June, certainly we've had rain events since then, but it has I guess the reality is that it probably flushed a lot of things that it potentially could have got hung up. And things could move around a little bit. So I think in general, what probably was seen could have been more localized issues from sediments and other things moving around the system. It's really hard to tell though without looking at individual address by address to assess what that individual situation might have been.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple other questions, so I'll go ahead and move on. But if you look at the minutes from the town hall meeting that was held in October of 2016, there was a lengthy list of short-term and long-term mitigations. And I don't need an answer on that right now, but I would like us to confirm that all of those suggestions were put into practice and that we did take all the precautions that were stated in 2016 or that were recommended in 2016. I wanted to ask how often we do look at our stormwater system. How often do we check those drains and determine, and when I say how often do we look at them, I'm talking about actually scoping the system. How often do we take a look and determine that everything is flowing as it should be?
Pat Thomas, do you want to confirm and take that question?
Yes, as a matter of fact, this year we were required by Eagle to inspect every catch basin, get all the depth of the lines themselves. We do have what we call an EnviroSite capable of looking into all the catch basins to check all the lines to make sure they were clear, make sure that the storm lines themselves didn't have any issues. We did go through the whole city. I got at least 3 books on that as far as that goes, on every catch basin, and also taking a look at most of the storm lines in the city.
So would you consider that something similar to a partial audit of the system? Because that was my next question, is to recommend that we audit our entire system and see where our weaknesses are.
Yeah, I would have to say, as far as inspection wise, yes, it was a partial as far as that went. Again, we did look into the lines. We didn't see really much at all. They were all cleaned as far as all the catch basins. And again, everything we do have documented.
Okay, thank you. So my last statement is just to ask the city manager, obviously, we're not going to have this all hashed out tonight, and we have other things that, we do need to talk about, but what are our next steps going to be? I don't think our residents are going to want to go a month without finding out what kind of progress has been made. So when can we plan to hear what those fixes are going to be, or that an audit is going to take place, or, you know, when can we determine what our short-term fixes are going to be and when they can be implemented? When are we going to get that information?
So I could say that obviously, you know, this was a challenge for not only Grosse Pointe Park, but other communities. You know, there's going to be a lot of diving into all of our infrastructure to figuring out, you know, what, you know, if something, there's a concern, whether it's, you know, outside of the city or within the city. I know as I spoke in my town hall meeting, you know, unfortunately, these things do take time. However, I'm very confident in the team we have here with OHM and DPW and myself that we'll be reaching out to avenues and sharing data and resources together. And as I stated as well, you know, we're going to be reapproaching Eagle in the state of Michigan and working with our local legislators, obviously, for their help in regards to securing relief for us. So, you know, I couldn't tell you that it's going to be at the next council meeting. It might be, but I do feel very confident that within the next, you know, weeks or months ahead, we'll have something further that can show concrete steps that we're going to take, whether that's, you know, upgrades or fixes, or whether we have new solutions that haven't been brought to us before. So I apologize, I can't give a definitive deadline, but it's certainly something that we are on top of and we'll be working as fast as possible.
I know it is going to be a massive process and it is going to take a lot of time, but I would like us to get to know what those steps are going to be as they start to fall into place. And I would even suggest that we maybe have a priority list of, obviously this is going to be priority number one, and there may be some things that have to be put on the back burner for a while we at least get the first steps in this process sorted out.
Yeah, and exactly.
Interrupt this. I think we just need to give the administration and their supporting engineers and so on a little bit of time to work this, and then I'm sure there'll be reports out to the public as they make progress and we have something concrete to report. As you pointed out, we can't possibly have all the answers right now. It's only 2 business days since the town hall, and they reported out pretty much what was known at that point. So just rest assured that I know that you know, Nick, DPW, and our engineers are focused on this, and you know, are going to work tirelessly to flesh out improvements, and they'll be reporting back. Anything else? Okay, with that, we'll close out council comment on unfinished business and move on to new business, the public hearing for the drinking water state revolving fund project plan. I have a few opening remarks and then turn it over to Nick and the administration. First of all, the agenda item is public hearing for drinking water state revolving fund. It will be followed by council's consideration of a resolution to approve the project plan and application related to the program. The Drinking Water State Revolving Fund is a low-interest financing mechanism administered by the state to facilitate drinking water infrastructure upgrades. This includes replacement of lead service lines, which is an unfunded state mandate. The deadline for submission of our application was July 1st. However, due to the impact of the June 25th and 26th storm, the special meeting of June 28th, which was to hold the public hearing, was canceled. So with the approval of this state, the city did submit our project plan on July 1st, pending this public hearing and adoption of the supporting resolution by council today. So at this point, I open the public hearing, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Project Plan. The project plan to be reviewed was developed based on a water system asset management plan completed by Grosse Pointe Park, for Grosse Pointe Park by Stantec Consulting. The city also completed a service line material inventory in support of the plan to identify lead service lines. OHM advisors assisted the city in preparing our application to the state. The project plan was reviewed on June 15th by the Public Service Committee of Council, consisting of council members Fluitt, McConnell, and me, Mayor Denner. The submission of our application is just that, an application. We may or may not be approved to participate in the program in 2022. The state's got limited funds and uses a scoring system which considers factors such as operation of a water treatment plant and if the city is a disadvantaged community, which are not in our favor. However, if approved, the final commitment to participate comes with the acceptance of state funds. If we're not approved initially for 2022, our application may then help secure future grant funding. We can also choose to reapply next year, or we could choose to pursue an infrastructure bond as the financing vehicle for the project. With that, I turn the public hearing over to the administration and City Manager Seisel. Nick?
Thank you, Mayor Denner, and members of council and the public. I have for you Patrick Droz of OHM Advisors and Krista of OHM, who will be giving us a overview of the project plan. As the mayor said, originally this was due by July 1. However, due to the storm event, we were able to work with the state and able to give us relief that we could hold this public hearing as the project plan has already been submitted. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce and let Patrick Droz go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Denner and Manager Seidland. So this evening, we will go through a presentation that will provide a high-level overview of what I would call some of the first steps in addressing the buried infrastructure beneath the city of Grosse Pointe Park. We'll talk a little bit about some of the age of the infrastructure, some of the issues that render it to be obsolete from the standpoint of current standards for water supply systems. And then we'll also talk about some of the opportunities that this particular grant funding can provide relative to dealing with some of the issues that are becoming more and more important for water systems, including lead service line replacement. Our presentation tonight will go through a statement of need. We will discuss improvements. Then we'll review the environmental aspects of this particular project plan. We will talk about the benefits. We'll open it up to questions as part of the public hearing and ultimately have a vote on a resolution that is included. I think it's the second to last page of your packet. We will also follow a fairly structured presentation as this is part of a potentially federally funded loan program. So as a result, any of the requirements for federal funds do apply for that. So that's particularly item 5, you see environmental impacts and mitigation. It's important that the project pass through the appropriate review for NEPA, which basically identifies any potential environmental impact as part of the project. As Mayor Denner has noted, this particular program we're using is through the Michigan Department of Energy and Great Lakes and Energy, excuse me, Environmental Great Lakes and Energy, and also the Michigan Municipal Bond Authority. And it provides low interest loans to help fund water system improvements across the state. How this generally works is everyone is on essentially the same schedule to get these project plans reviewed and submitted, and then the state of Michigan takes those particular applications and ranks them and scores them. And then those falling within the fundable range are combined together. And as long as environmental clearances are in place, that particular batch of projects moves forward through a process to ultimately bond for the projects and then lead those to bidding and then construction. But as I had mentioned, and if those of you that were present for the meeting back in the middle of June recall, part of the drive of why this project is of focus right now really comes down to some of the aging aspects of the infrastructure. As we'll show in a later slide, the mains are really at the point where they're really starting to outlive their useful design life. There's also some of the issues with just the sizes of the water mains throughout the city and the layout of those. There are some instances where we do have dead end pipes. So both the undersized natures of pipes as well as dead end pipes can result in water quality issues. It can also compromise fire suppression in certain instances as well. Additionally, many of the water meters throughout the system are aging. And that particularly can be an issue from the standpoint of determining how much water is actually being used. As meters age, they tend to run slow, which means they don't accurately depict how much water is actually being consumed. And so what then happens in that particular situation is we get a bill from GLWA for the water consumed. we get the proceeds from the bills that get sent out, and then there's a gap that begins to form. And as those meters get slower and slower, that gap gets larger and larger. And so the bills become slightly less accurate. So getting up-to-date meters helps deal with that, and it kind of accounts for what we call water loss in the system. And it also gives us opportunities to be more green, because meters now typically use radio reads, which require less actual person going to the home to actually get the reading. It can be collected remotely, which allows DPW staff to work on other things throughout the system. There's also a requirement as a result of the change of the lead and copper rule, which requires cities and municipalities that operate public water supply systems to replace all of the lead service lines within 20 years. Generally speaking, that requires us to take out about 5% per year. In a city where we have almost 2,000 of those lead service lines throughout the community, we need to get started on that sooner than later, because ultimately the time is if we delay that, it's just going to result in a larger project later on. As was mentioned, much of what you're going to see tonight was part of an asset management plan that was prepared back in 2020. We've taken that and packaged it into this grant application that will allow us to apply for the revolving fund if we so choose to do so. This particular graph here is just provided to give you an idea of the approximate age of the water system. The data set that we use to build this looks at the water mains throughout the city. And generally speaking, many of them are at the point of approaching or exceeding 100 years in age, or will in the very near future. Typically for cast iron water main, which we believe is the vast majority of the system, we can expect routinely anywhere between 75 to 100 years of service life. There are instances where it can last longer because many of the mains, many times, especially first generation cast iron, tended to be thicker than they probably needed to be. That translates to prolonged service life, so that's a benefit. But at the same time, when they do break, it is typically a pretty situation where it's a matter of time before we start to see others in the system. And as a result, as we've seen in the last few years, there's been a notable uptick in the number of breaks. And so looking at average breaks per year, if we look at these in 5-year buckets, we've seen an increase that shows that we are starting to really approach the end of that service life. And depending on, it has some factors to do with the main itself, but then also the winters and how deep that particular water main is. But if we get a cold snap, you can always, almost predict that might start happening again. So with that in mind, we're seeing these breaks are definitely increasing, and it's becoming time to take a look at the water system. And as we mentioned, of course, there's obviously other aspects of the infrastructure we have to focus on, but relative to the water system, certainly the mains themselves are of focus at the moment. Krista will kind of walk through some of the projects that we would use to potentially address these.
Thanks, Patrick. So as part of the project, we have several improvements that are proposed, including looping the dead-end water mains to improve water quality, replace the undersized water mains. A majority of the mains are about 6 inches, and current standards are 8 inches or larger for water mains. So in areas where we will replace the water mains, we'll replace them with the current standard of 8 inches. Unless it's a larger one, in which case we'll replace it in kind. Replace the aged water mains where the water main breaks are occurring, and replace approximately 1,225 water meters as well as lead service lines. So if the lead service line is found, then the water meter would be replaced at the same time. So the factors that were used to determine which areas would be the focus of the project included water main break frequency. So where the water mains were breaking in similar areas, those were identified. Again, replacing water mains that are not at the minimum standard, water meters that are approaching the end of the useful life and complying with the Michigan lead and copper rules, so we can replace the lead service lines as they're found. As part of all project plans, there are two alternatives that must be looked at. It includes a regional alternative, as Grosse Pointe Park is already served by the Great Lakes Water Authority. They are by definition already in a regional system. And then optimal performance of the existing water system. There is nothing that the city could do to make the water mains a younger age at this point. So optimization was not an option. So the two main alternatives that we did consider both included the water main replacements and upgrades in terms of sizing, the replacement of the water mains and the replacement of the lead service lines. We looked at two different technologies. One was the directional drilling, and then we also looked at open cut. So this is a graphic of the existing system. The blue lines are the 6-inch water mains. So you can see that many of, would almost say a majority of the system are the 6-inch water mains that are undersized by current standards. And the other markings are hydrants and gate valves. And then they're also shown the connection points with the GLWA system, the GK01, 2, and 3. This graphic shows the proposed project plan areas. So the light green is project area number 1 along the west side of the city, as well as along Mack Avenue. Then there's the orange or peachish color just east of that. Project area number 3 is on the eastern side of the city. And then you have the pink area, which is more along the southern side. All of the green water mains are this currently 6 inches that would be replaced with 8 inches. The blue just indicates that they would be replaced in kind. So those are currently already 8 inches or larger. And then the dark color that, I'm not sure if that's red or what, but those show the locations of the existing dead end water mains that would be looped to provide better water quality and operation of the system. These are the costs associated with it. We show both alternatives, the directionally drilled and the open trench. So the open trench, you actually physically dig into the dirt and remove the old pipe and place the new pipe, while directionally drilling allows you to only open up certain areas, and the pipe is then pushed through as far as a replacement. In all cases, the directional drilled alternative is slightly less expensive, although the costs are close enough that during the project, we recommend that the city look at both PVC, a plastic material, or the ductile iron, but following a directionally drilled installation practice. And the total capital cost of all 4 areas is anticipated to be $27.7 million. And that equates to the residential bills of an increase, as the bills are every 2 months, of approximately $66 per residential unit or home.
And so, as Krista had mentioned, we looked at 2 different alternatives when looking at how to deal with the issue of replacing this volume of water main. And So as we do that, we look at, you know, the impacts of construction. Certainly a project of that geographical coverage, that size, that duration, and just for people's knowledge, that's probably a 4 to 5 year type of project that would work across the city. We have to look at what are the potential impacts that happen during construction. So obviously traffic impacts, lane closures, noise, dust. And then there's going to be periods of water main that you might have an interruption as new mains are put in, connections are made. We try to minimize that through construction, but there's always going to be a day or two on any block when it comes time to tie the new main in. That main just has to be shut down for a span of a few hours to make that final connection. That can be done in a way to really minimize impact to residents. The most important thing on that comes down to communication. So letting the block know when that shutdown is going to be. We always try to do it at a time after people have had a chance to get up, shower, and get to work. But those are just some things that will be handled more during construction. The other thing that we would try to do, obviously, is our traffic control. Maintain typical work hours to respect noise ordinances and in cases wherever possible, try to work only during the week. Every now and then, if there are rain events that shut down a job site for a day or two, contractors often will want to work on the weekends. Try to minimize that as much as possible, but sometimes it's necessary to keep a project on schedule. The other potential environmental impact is soil erosion and sedimentation control. Obviously, bringing in and excavating out materials to build projects generates a lot of material. So that is a constant battle as part of any construction project, but that'll be mitigated through the construction oversight to make sure that job sites are left as neat and tidy as possible. Additionally, as Krista had mentioned, we looked at 2 different alternatives for construction. Both of those will have some level of impact to the ground. The directional drill was chosen, or at least recommended, as a potential option, largely because of it reduces the amount of impact to surface materials. Certainly with the city of Grosse Pointe Park, when we look at routing water main as engineers, we see that maintaining the tree canopy is going to be a very important thing, maintaining the character of these streets. And sometimes with open cut construction, it can be cheaper, but there can be some losses, you know, in terms of having to take trees out. That's to be avoided. But in this particular situation, directional drilling has become such a well-used technology in what we call trenchless installation. It's now very much competitive with open cut. And because we don't have to put back as much of the roadway, we can be much more prescribed in where those excavations happen. It's become a preferred way to do these type of projects. And so as you saw in the pricing, not only will it have less impact on the streets and trees, it'll also have a reduced cost. So in general, the benefits of this particular project to residents. So after this project is completed, if the council so chooses to advance an application to the revolving fund, increased reliability of water service to residents. So what does that mean? It means less water main breaks. With water main breaks, there's always a shutdown and restart of the system, which has the tendency to kind of basically break loose some of the turbidity that may exist within the system. So things like discolored water can happen more frequently. As you get a new system that doesn't have that buildup, that becomes much less frequent. You'll see greatly improved system pressures and flow to meet fire suppression requirements. So by having pipes that are larger in diameter, they can carry more flow. We can also run those at greater pressures, which again help with the ability to fight fires if those are events that happen. Also, as development happens, that makes it sometimes easier to develop because you don't necessarily need to include fire pumps on projects to boost the pressures. protect public health through the replacement of lead service lines and comply with regulatory requirements. As mentioned, the state of Michigan recently adopted the most stringent lead and copper rule in the country. And so Michigan is in many ways the leader of this particular infrastructure improvement. As it's been seen throughout, there are many projects that are focusing on that. It's part of many of the infrastructure discussions. It's not a question of if lead service lines need to be replaced, it's when. And so we have fairly strict orders from the state of Michigan that has to happen within 20 years. This particular project, by taking out over 1,200 lead service lines, will greatly move Grosse Pointe Park ahead in terms of taking care of the need of that. And then again, more accurate tracking of water consumption, and we'll be able to identify potential sources of water loss in the system. So at that, we can open it up to questions and answers. As part of this project plan, we will receive those. We will do our best to answer them. And if not, the responses will be recorded as part of the final project plan that gets posted with the Department of Eagle. And also, I think they'll probably be posted on the city website. We'll include a question and answer section in the appendix.
So at this time, I believe we move from the presentation mode to the public comment portion of the public hearing, as was indicated by Patrick. And I'll ask the administration to administer this portion.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. So first, I'll ask Patrick to clarify real quick, but Patrick, the two written comments that I received, those will be submitted into the appendix submitted to the state. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Leah, do we have any public comments in the queue for the Drinking Water Revolving Fund?
City Manager Seisland, I have no public comment at this time.
Okay. With no public comment, we can move on to discussion of the resolution by council and our vote. Council, you've seen the presentation. It was reviewed. My view is that this is a project that is very important to our city and the infrastructure in our city, so that everyone knows what ultimately we'd be asked to approve should we decide to move ahead with the application and the project plan. Is a resolution that was in your package. It's only about 1 page long, and essentially says that we approve the project plan as Patrick presented. So, Council, I'd like to call on you to open discussion. I guess to get discussion going at the council level, I will move that we adopt the resolution adopting the final project plan for water system improvements and designating an authorized project representative as contained in your package. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, we have motion and support. Let's open discussion on the motion. If you, Patrick, if you could end your screen sharing, then I could see all of council, and it will facilitate my ability to call on council. Thank you. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Robson.
Thank you, Mayor. Patrick, I have one, if you will, technical question on behalf of myself and citizens. A lot of the homes here in Grosse Pointe Park are over 100 years old. That means they have foundations that are over 100 years old. This process, you're talking about this drilling process, is there concern on the effect of these basement walls, if you will? Anxieties, concerns, how would that be addressed?
I think I would, first and foremost, I think I would agree with that comment that the proximity of construction to the homes is definitely something we should be concerned with. But it is also something that we can include provisions within the contract to really make sure that care is taken. More than likely, the water main itself will go in the greenbelt area between the sidewalk and the curb. And of course, in some areas that finds ourselves pretty close to foundations. The majority of the trenchless installation that will be done when we put the main in, it's really what happens is you drill and then you basically ream the old pipe back or the new pipe in that void space is created. So it's actually less disruptive than say if you were to do an open cut where a lot of times you'll have to use a vibrating compactor to basically drive that trench back down. There will be instances where we do service lines that we will be we will need to use that compaction method. But we can include provisions within contracts to make sure the contractors are careful with that. Another thing that we'll do is what we call audio-visual survey. If we are going to be going into homes, documenting conditions before the work starts. So if there are cracks or things that do happen to foundations, we basically have record of it, and it can be something that we can include in contract as a provision if there's repairs that are needed to be completed.
One quick question on the water meter changeouts.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I just quickly jump in there for
Sure.
just to essentially a follow-up to your point to make sure that I understand it properly. My understanding is that the process that's going to be used, it's either good news or bad news depending on your point of view, is very similar to what DTE just completed in our city for the gas main replacement, so that they used a directional boring approach, very similar to what's being proposed as part of this project for everybody's reference. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's good to know. But now replacing all of the water meters inside the house. Old one comes out, new one comes in. What about the connecting pipes and hoses? Can you talk about that?
So
to the indoor water meters.
Sure. So generally speaking, the lead and copper rule requires that new water services are basically connected to within the home. And then generally speaking, we try to limit the work after that to about 18 inches after that meter gets installed. Because really you have to kind of stop somewhere, and that's kind of at least where the current guidance from the Department of Eagle has identified as that's kind of the stopping point. As part of that work, there's going to be some definite notification. So when we go to the point of entering a home, there's a fairly robust communication that starts honestly about 45 days before construction even starts. We send out letters to let people know that we found potentially a lead service line. We're going to need to do a replacement. The day of, we will basically reach out, or the day before, reach out to the property owner that work is going to happen, go into the home, observe what's going to happen. And if we do, for instance, on the inside, find that there is lead on the other side, it's just a communication with the property owner about that condition. One thing to note, just because we do find, potentially a lead service line inside of the house, certainly older fixtures within homes, old brass fixtures have the potential to have lead in them. The fact is that the city still has a very high quality water service. The water quality reports show that lead lines are well below the action limits because there is, and Krista can maybe add to this, but there's additives that are included in the water supply to really prevent any sort of corrosion. That said, after that connection is made, until we get a clean test back, the homeowner will be provided with a pitcher or bottle of water until we are assured that the water is safe. And at that time, once that test comes back, then we'll work with the property owner to flush out the system, make sure the areas are clean. And then basically, I know I kind of probably went a little beyond your question, but that's generally the process, what happens when we go into a home and find that, potentially it might be lead. on the
Okay,
other side.
thank you.
Okay, who's next? Councilmember Fluid?
Thanks. I think I just have two questions. One is, I'm looking at the chart, which is page 6 in the executive summary, and it indicates under phase 5 that we're going to develop an alternate source with Grosse Pointe Farms, which is estimated to be $11 million. Why are we doing that?
So that was actually as part of the asset management plan from 2020. We removed that from the project plan just because the immediate need of addressing lead service lines and the main itself, we felt that was more, working with city staff, administration felt that was more important. That particular project was removed from this actual project plan you're voting on. We just included that as in the appendix of basically some background.
Okay, so we can maybe update our asset management plan to fit the project plan?
Yes, well, the project plan really just reflects what elements of the asset management plan the city wants to advance.
Okay. And then my other question is, so it's very specific that the project plan is going to be replacing 1,225 lead service lines, but we have another 800 lead service lines that have been left out, which is another $4.8 million approximately. And I'm basing that figure on the presentation that was given to the Public Service Committee, which I'm on, where it was estimated that each lead service line was going to be around $6,000. So why did we pull those 800 lead service lines out, and when would they be addressed?
So to answer that question, generally speaking, what we use to basically extract projects from the community it was basically looking at the number of breaks that we had, where those lead service lines are, and trying to really focus on those particular areas. And so doing that, there's these 4 project areas that elevated. And you can, I think going back to the presentation we did back in June, you could see how you could move a few streets over and all of a sudden the brakes were not present. So we know that the mains are all approaching the end of their service life. And it's also most efficient to do this all at once. So if you are going to be replacing the service line, you wouldn't want to connect it to a 100-year-old water main. I think basically this is the first initial kind of a massive, 4 or 5 year project on the front end of it. And then as we start to see the next streets that are having more and more breaks, then we start to take those as those elevate. It's rather than kind of going around the rest of the community and just attacking the service lines. Basically, the thought is that we take care of these first 4 or 5 years worth of projects, and then reevaluate and then identify what the needs are after that. There's no intention to stop after this one, but this is really kind of the confluence of the really aging and undersized water main and where the vast majority of those lead service lines are.
Yeah, and to add, Councilmember Fluid, as Patrick was saying, we asked that we try and concentrate on areas of the city that have the highest concentration of lead service lines. For example, the West Park area. We were hoping, or the intent is that we would, go after these areas, try and, get as many lead service lines as possible, which is we're estimating about it'd be roughly 60% if we were able to go through. And then for the remaining years we have to replace the lead service lines, the city would be able to better manage, the opportunity to, replace those lines, whether down the road, there's grant funding from the state or from the federal government and others. And so that was kind of the strategy. It's quite aggressive, but we felt confident that, this needed to be done. So just to add to Patrick a little bit.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying is these are the water mains that are in the most dire need of replacement, and we're going to do those lead service lines at the same time. However, we have other lead service lines where the water mains might last a little bit longer. Okay, but let's keep in mind, in theory, we have 20 years to replace the rest of the lead service lines. Nobody wants to have a lead service line at their house. So, and what we had talked about a year ago when we first, when Public Service Committee first started discussing this, was that we wanted to get those lead service lines replaced as quickly as possible. Now, they may not be dangerous levels of lead, but obviously if people have lead service lines, they're going to want them replaced. So this project that we're talking about tonight is not going to completely address the problem. We're going to have to do this again in other areas shortly after this project is complete. Correct?
My sense of that is that, and Patrick and Nick can comment on this. My sense of that is that this is a big chunk and gets us through the most critical parts of our infrastructure that's causing us problems, and also a huge chunk of the lead service lines. We'll be able to then continue the process in smaller pieces, which are more manageable from a funding standpoint over the remaining 15 years that we have to get rid of the lead. Now, we'd like to do it much faster than that, but we'll be able to do it, I would anticipate, on a more measured basis, as opposed to a very large project that we're looking at here. I'll ask Patrick and the city manager to comment if I'm accurate, but that's the way I look at this, as a critical first step, and positions us to be able to manage what will be remaining.
I can confirm, Mayor Denner. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Fluid, that, yeah, that was the intent of this.
Okay, and I understand that, and now we've got a lot going on, but I'm just saying, just because we have 20 years to complete the lead service lines, as we talked about last year, I don't think we're going to want to take another 20 years to get that done, because people aren't going to want to wait to have those lines replaced.
Agreed.
Okay. What else? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, so my question is, and I didn't find it in these very detailed materials, but maybe it's buried in there somewhere. What is the lifespan on the replacement service lines? We've had some that are, we have some now that are 80 to 100 years old. How much are we going to get out of what we're talking about investing in?
Chris, I think we've generally been kind of using the 90-year lifespan for PVC, similar for copper. There's plenty of copper service lines that are in the ground that go back even to this vintage. So I think we would expect at least 90 years for the full system.
Thank you.
Who else? Anybody else? Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first, we had talked in the Public Service Committee about some alternatives to this. Even if we submit the application, we're not wedded to this option, right? Can one of you speak to that, please?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to part of it. As I'll just reiterate what I said in the beginning, and then I'll let Patrick, who's more familiar with the details of the state requirements. If we don't, first of all, our commitment to the program is finalized when we accept state funds. So first of all, we have to accept, and then we have to accept the state funds, and then we proceed with the project. If we do not get approved this time, then the city needs to examine alternatives going forward. If we want to move quickly, we'd have to look at other financing options. For example, an infrastructure bond. If we want to, we could also in parallel apply for next year. And at the same time, there may be additional grant funding that becomes available over the next year, which helps us. So all those things could be on the table. But if we don't get this in the pipeline, then this option would not be available to the city. I'll turn it over to the experts here to see if I was accurate.
I think that's completely accurate. I also think from the standpoint of project financing, there are some benefits to more of a local project if you do go basically the bond route, handling it within the city. One of the strategies that we feel is a benefit to the city of going through this particular process is that we do put ourselves in position that if federal infrastructure dollars become available, programs, et cetera, at least in the past, a lot of those were routed right through this program. And there was instances where there's principal forgiveness. One of the things that Krista looked at is this particular project already qualifies for a green project reserve. So, you know, even if the financing works out to be pretty similar between going through Dwarf or going through just a local project, all of a sudden, if there's principal forgiveness, that's a bit of a game changer about what the right avenue is. So I think being in position, I mean, this is essentially the first step to what we would usually call a shovel-ready project. You know, having these ready to go, even if you started on a local program, these are all still valid projects that, you know, if you wanted to move it up in the queue, it would, you know, make sense just to have it ready to go in the hopper. Krista, anything on project?
Yeah, I mean, you could do less than what's proposed. For instance, if the project area 4, the city decided not to proceed with, you could do that. But you can't use the dollars from the loan for something else. So you couldn't switch project areas. Say there's an area in the city that is not identified in the project plan that you want to instead place the water main. You are restricted to what is stated in the project plan.
Yeah, just thank you for that. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that I wouldn't want us to move forward. I just want us to be diligent about pursuing other alternatives in the interim, because I'm worried about, you know, how long it's going to take, and also the burden of taxpayers. So if there's other ways that we can do this or fund this, that's what I'm encouraging us to do. And then I think people need clarity. So can someone say if at all this is in any way related to or can have any impact on what happened, you know, with the incident at the end of June?
Does it have, in other words, does it have any relationship to our sanitary and stormwater systems?
Correct.
Patrick?
There shouldn't be any impact to that. No, this is fully on the water supply side. There, you know, on these construction projects, there will be some, I'll call it incidental touches where maybe a catch basin may need to get reconstructed, but by and large, this is really driven totally at the water supply system.
Yeah, my understanding of that is that actions that we take to make improvements, to make our system more resilient against things like that happen, things like what happened at the end of June, would be separately pursued from this with other sources of funding from the city or grants or whatever.
If I could just add one thought, you know, one of the benefits of having the somebody mentioned the asset management plan that sits beneath what you're looking at today, that looked at the entire city. So we do have a data set of the conditions of all the water main in the city, where all the lead service lines are, where the problems are. So if we do start looking at the sewer side of things or even the roads, it's a situation where we can start layering things. If it's not maybe not just the water main, maybe it's also something with storm or drainage or roads. That is when you start talking about asset management. When you have all that data in one spot, you can really start to make quick decisions and smart decisions. And the city's been positioning that with the asset management plan for this, the PACER for the roads. And then as we get more information about the sewer system, all that's going to help us make smart decisions about the infrastructure, because it's a significant investment that's going to be needed, as I think everyone can understand.
Then the last point, and then I will move on, is we are doing this in a coordinated fashion, right? So that we won't have multiple disruptions to residents' neighborhoods, correct? Meaning lead, water main replaced in the same area at the same time. And as we visit these other issues, that we will coordinate those two, right? So people won't have to constantly be disrupted.
That's definitely the vision. When you do that's again maybe why some of the projects came out the way they did, is if there's problematic mains and lead services, let's do them all at the same time. just so we limit that impact.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rowland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nick, we've known about this potential project since about 2018. Is that correct?
So if you're talking in regards to lead service line requirement, yes, since 2018, that's correct.
And we've had 4, 5, 10 main breaks a year, probably. I'm wondering if you addressed any of those as you were repairing those, or.
So we've actually had more than that over the last couple of years, as Patrick said too. You know, we have you know, there's been main breaks in the area. Mack Avenue is probably one of our hardest hit areas. We actually did explore an opportunity to work on Mack Avenue with a water main project. However, upon review of this DWRF proposal, we were hoping instead of just piecemealing and, you know, doing just Mack Avenue, we could go on a further scale as we were addressing and looking at our infrastructure that, you know, is much more, you know, on a wider scale that we should do so. We did look at pursuing this project through another engineering firm in the past. You know, it was very similar. There's a couple changes done from that and the cost was actually higher. And so after review from OHM and, you know, looking into our most critical areas, we were able to reduce that overall cost of this DWRF project.
Cool. No, I was wondering as you go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
No, I just wanted to add just a little bit to that. You're right. The lead service line issue, you know, really started focused with the state mandate, I think. And the work that the city has done, though, to prepare for that started very close to that same time with the initiation of the asset management plan, the lead service line inventory. And so we've been doing the preliminary engineering and investigation work to position the city so that we could actually launch a project. And that's where we are today.
Yeah, this is a very detailed packet. I really appreciate all the work put into there. I was just wondering, as you guys repair these water main breaks that are happening constantly, are you already going a step further and replacing them with, you know, rather than just a Band-Aid, replacing with what we're going to be doing with this project? That was my initial question. You know, I had a water main break on my front lawn, so I didn't know if you replaced that with, you know, with the copper or the PVC.
I can ask Pat Thomas to discuss further. Otherwise, you know, when it comes to main breaks, typically we're just, you know, fixing the break. Otherwise, you know, on a path, you know, you're talking Councilmember Raylan, you know, probably close to 100,000 or more, depending upon, you know, how large of a surface area. But Pat Thomas, do you want to further comment about your experience when, you know, DPW is fixing a main break?
Yeah, usually on a water main break, we try to make sure that we're able to isolate the area that we need to repair. We go ahead and do the repair as fast as possible in order to get the water back on. Flush the hydrants and such, just in order to, you know.
Yeah, get life back to normal.
Flowing. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Two more questions I have is I saw Krista mention $66 bi-monthly for the residents is a potential charge. Is that right? And how long would that be going on for? Or is it a one-time charge, which we're all hoping for?
I'm afraid not. That is calculated to pay back the loan over the 20 years.
It'd be 20 years, every 2 months, every resident's paying an extra $6. So about, what does that break down to? About $360 a year extra per resident for 20 years. Okay, so that's quite a big hit on us residents as well. And then one last question is: there some residents have replaced their own lines, maybe from digging up their own yards, or will they be exempt from these charges?
So your question was that if they've already done the lead service line, that they will be exempt from this charge. Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but as this would be distributed throughout the entire community. So even if you've had your lead service line replaced, you're also helping to fix the water main. You're also doing the meters and such. I did just want to add one quick comment. The per year cost of what's proposed is very similar to what was the sewer separation project done by the city many years ago. On average, you were looking at about $350. So it's very similar to that.
Yeah, just a perspective. Another reason that the timing of all this, we knew that we needed to start planning for the the water mains. But the sewer separation project really just came off the books in terms of burden on our taxpayers a couple years ago. So the timing, the idea, maybe a year ago, the timing is designed to not overlap those two burdens on our residents.
Yeah, and as we identified a couple months ago, that project still isn't done. So we'll piggybacking on all this. Will that be charged to the residents again for fixing what was missed?
Oh, those are additional things that'll be done as we identify improvements to our storm and sanitary infrastructure, and those will be separately.
Okay, so residents may get charged again for that project.
Cool. Well, or it could come out of the general fund budget.
Perfect. That's what we're hoping for. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I'm all set.
Okay. Anybody else? Councilmember Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Most of my questions have been answered thanks to the detailed materials provided to us and some of the questions already tonight. I just wanted to reiterate my sense of this is the $66 fee is a worst case scenario, and that we'll be working toward relief solutions as part of our due diligence going forward, correct? Whether it's the principal forgiveness or possibly even Mr. Droz coordinating this project with other projects so as to get some economies of scale with construction costs, similar to what happened when we were fortunate enough to have the DTE project correspond with some other crossing needs and that we had, where we were able to maximize those costs. So I would assume some of those engineering processes are going to be coordinated as well as a cost saving method. And again, hoping that $66 is a worst case scenario.
That's certainly the hope. If there are outside funding sources that contribute to that, even even think about we occasionally will get federal dollars for road projects. If we can kind of start to piggyback projects, and maybe we're only paying for traffic control once, or we're any pavement cuts are minimized, that's always the goal. Obviously, we know it's a significant ask. We're looking at, we're talking about dealing with 60% of the lead service lines in the community. That is a very aggressive, approach. Most communities are definitely taking a slower pace to that. So there, we know there are other infrastructure needs, and I think the goal is, as we, study some of the other potential improvements out there, just to start to identify where those overlap and where we can find some savings.
So it is an investment in our property value, and I see that the city manager is committed to finding the best solutions as well. And however I can assist you, Mr. Seisland, as council member for finance, know that I'm here to do that. So thank you to the administration and the team for getting us to this point. I'm ready to vote when my colleagues are.
Okay, is there anything else before we call the question? We have the motion on the floor to approve a resolution adopting a final project plan for water system improvements and designating an authorized project representative. You have it before you. It essentially says that the city of Grosse Pointe Park, in order to make improvements to water treatment and distribution, and that whereas the city of Grosse Pointe Park is authorizing OHM advisors to prepare a project plan which recommends the construction of 81,800 feet of replacement looping 8-inch larger water main and replacement of 1,225 lead service lines and water meters. And whereas said project plan was presented at a public hearing today, and all public comments have been considered and addressed. Now therefore be it resolved that we formally adopt this project plan. Please call the question.
Councilmember Rayland,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Rapson,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Pruitt,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. We'll forward the signed resolution to the state, and that will complete our application. And then we'll go from there. There's a lot to do in city infrastructure, both on this front and as we talked about earlier on the sewer side as well. The next item on the agenda, that closes the public hearing for the drinking water state revolving fund project plan. The next item on the agenda under new business is a redistricting resolution. Every 10 years as a result of the census, each state redistricts their congressional districts to be consistent with the new census. Each state has different approaches to that. Our state recently voted to have that completed by an independent commission, whereas formerly it was the responsibility of the state legislature. And of course, the political party with the majority tended to redistrict in a way that suited them. We have theoretically a bipartisan approach to that through our commission. However, in the redistricting 10 years ago, for the first time, the Grosse Pointes and Harper Woods were separated. Up until 10 years ago, the Grosse Pointes and Harper Woods, at least in my memory, were always included in the same districts. That resulted in loss of voice and representation in the view of all of the points, and the mayors and managers have talked about it. Many of you have weighed in on it. We've had an opportunity as individuals to express our excuse me, our preference to consider the Points in Harper Woods as a community of interest, which is consistent with the way that the statute reads. And this formally puts the city council and our city behind the notion that the Grosse Pointes and Harper Woods should be united in the result of the next redistricting maps. So you have a resolution before you, which accomplishes in legal words and with some explanations what I just described. And to get it started, I will accept a motion to adopt the resolution regarding decennial redistricting.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Support. Okay. Discussion. Excuse me. I think everybody's violently in agreement that we need to move ahead on this. Councilmember Fluid.
My only question is, because I was looking at, I think our resolution is basically the same thing that was already passed by Grosse Pointe City.
Yes.
It's similar to, I understand both the Grosse Pointe Democrats and the East Side Republican Club are in favor of this.
Yes.
The only question I had was that our population altogether may not be big enough to actually make us a full district. And for that and other reasons, we might want to include portions of the east side of Detroit in this district. So my question about this resolution as it's presented is, it's only a resolution, and this certainly would not be perceived as us saying that we would like the east side of Detroit to be excluded from this district.
That is correct. It does not say that. The expectation is that put the Grosse Pointes together, and then what other contiguous communities that make sense. If we need to add more to make up a district, that's what would be done. That's the intent of the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else before we call the question? Councilmember Hodges.
Just to add to Member Fluid's comment, if we're thinking really strategically about what the primary issues are going to be over the next 10 years, when we will reconsider this district again, it will be infrastructure. And we want to have the stamina and the strength of, a collaborative effort to have the voice that we need to secure resources at both a federal and state level. So I think that would add some credence to keeping the door open to expanding the district in a way that allows us to strategically manage those needs and ensure that we have the greatest problem-solving potential available to us. So that's just one other consideration to have on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we call the question? Let's call the question then. Clerk Blayhead, please call the roll.
Councilmember Rayland,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Fluid,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. Hopefully our voice, along with the voice of our neighbors, will be heard and respected. Next item on the agenda is council comment, new business. Council, do you have any comment at this on new business? Councilman Rowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to mention that we've been trying to get the diversity inclusion meeting back up. June and May were really busy. July, we were still dealing with their infrastructure issues. So we're looking to do that in August. I'll keep everyone posted on that. And as Nick mentioned, I just want to reiterate that we want to make this infrastructure analysis our #1 priority. Everyone really needs to understand that our council is pushing that. Council can't really do anything. What we can do is support Nick and his team and the mayor in finding the right experts to help us guide us through that. So I wanted to make that statement known as well. Nick, you and I talked about possibly asking GLWA to reduce our rates for maybe June 26th through that first week of the flood, because everyone was using so much water to clean and do their basements and all that. I don't know if there's any chance of getting a reduced rate in water fees for that.
That's something I'd probably have to work further with the city attorney and also talk with insurance counsel as well, if that's something we should, be exploring.
Yeah, thank you. And then there's also, I think DTE was upping the rates of electricity during the day, during peak hours. I'm wondering if we can get that reduced as well. I mean, it's just going to save $100 here and there, but everything counts after we lost so much in the last 2 weeks. So if you can look into that as well. One last thing is June 27th, all of our values dropped 5%. And June 27th, we also got our tax bills in our mail. I know they were sent prior. I'm wondering if there's anything the administration can do to reevaluate our SEVs and give us that 5% off right away. That'll save $300, $400, $500 per household. I don't know if that's possible or not, but I see you smiling, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if there's a possibility or not. It would require a little extra work, but
I think the assessment structure is something that's locked in at the county level. And it's an annual process, and it's backward looking in terms of the impact of value changes and inflation.
So we'll bring it up again, maybe in the future when we can readdress that. And I think that's all I had. I wanted to say thank you again to DPW, Tom and Nick and Pat, and all the things you guys have done for us and public safety as well. So thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you. So Councilmember Reed asked at a prior meeting about making the budget like a fluid document. And I think in light of what happened with the flood, would be good to get a total in terms of what the impact on the budget has been, and consider having a discussion among council, because I think we're all committed to finding the resources that we need to address. So if we need to make some adjustments, we should talk about that. But I think we need to know what the impact was and see if we need to revisit some priorities as a result. And I'd like that to be, council coming together to talk about that. The second thing is I just wanted to ping again the communication survey that's been submitted some time ago. I think we also learned from this experience that we still need to improve the ways that we communicate with residents. So I'd love to see if we can get that survey out, perhaps in the communicator. And then the third thing is, unfortunately, to possibly, I guess, give some reality check to residents per a community meeting conversation about FEMA. First, if we get the designation, that's one thing. Second, there's still a long protracted process. I think people need to understand that. And then the third thing is, unfortunately, a lot of items likely won't be included that people may think. So I just want people to be realistic about that, sadly. So the designation is one thing, then the timing is another. And the third is, it may not be as extensive payout as people expect. So not to be Debbie Downer, but I just believe in truth telling. So I thought I would put that up there. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that point that Councilmember McConnell made. I did ask during the budget process that we institute a budget monitoring. I said quarterly, if not monthly, at least quarterly. I think by August, I would ask for at least the financial hit of the storm recovery and remediation, because that's going to impact the budget that we passed 2 months ago. And I think we need to be aware of what that was. Hopefully there'll be resources to fill in the gaps there, but we need to be prepared for that because we're just starting our budget year as of July 1st.
I have talked to Nick and the team about that, and they are closely tracking all of our incremental costs associated with the storm event.
Just so they communicate that to council so we're aware.
Well, they have to, it has to be all tallied up.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add, Councilmember Reed and Mayor Denner, yes, as soon as the storm hit, as part of our process, we were tracking, overtime hours, additional labor that's brought in, the contractors, damage done to City Hall. Obviously some of it, the county was requesting at a very expeditious rate. And so we provided information to them of what we had at the time. We submitted supplemental information as well. And we are slowly starting to get those invoices in from all the contractors. We have not received them all yet. So yes, as soon as we have that, I'll be able to give you a further information in regards to how much, of a hit that, this will impact our city budget.
Okay. Anybody else? Mayor Pro Tem Robson?
Just one quick question for Mr. Thomas, because citizens are going to inquire. Is Green for Life routine trash pickup back on track? I think they are. I live in the Monday section, and that seems to have gone well.
Yes, they are back on track again. Well, they
Thank
should
you.
be picking up, the whole week, this week, right on time.
Great job by all. Thank you, Pat.
And thank you, council, for your support.
Anybody else? Okay, that closes council comment. And we'll move on to public comment, non-agenda items. I'll turn it over to the administration to manage that section.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. I have no written public comments. Leah?
And thank you, City Manager Seisman and Mayor Denner. I have no public comment at this time.
Okay, that closes public comment for non-agenda items. Actually, I'll leave that open for just one more minute. Leah, let me know if it changes. Okay, we will now close public comment for non-agenda items. At the request of the administration, as is noted on your agenda, I move to enter into a closed door session under Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute. We have a written attorney-client privileged opinion letter. I so move. Is there support to move into
Support.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Rayland,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes. At this time, we'll move into closed door. This will close the public portion of the meeting. Any action that may come out of the closed door in terms of a vote of council will occur in open door and be part of the recorded minutes. However, the minutes of a closed door are subject to completely different requirements per the OMA statute. So with that, I'll ask Leah to excuse the public, and we'll take about let's take about a 5-minute break here while we sort of clear everything up. And I thank the public for participating and for attending tonight. And I'll see you all in about 5 minutes for our closed door session.
a button. Should be seeing a button that's called breakout room. If you can please click on the breakout room, you'll be asked to join.
So join, okay. Hold on just a minute. All right, we are back in, call to order back in regular session, coming out of our closed door session. And we have a sense of council, and I would like to ask our Labor Council to suggest some verbiage for a motion which we could adopt.
I'd move to adopt the recommendation as provided by the city manager and city labor attorney.
I so move with those words. Is there support?
I'll support.
We have support. Call the roll, please. Hello? Is there someone to call the roll?
Yeah,
Still muted.
1 second. Let me see. Leah, can you
Can you
call?
hear me now?
Yep.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Hi, James.
Yes.
Yes, you can hear me? Okay, Councilmember Rayland,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. That concludes that business. I move that we adjourn the meeting. Is there support?
Support.
support. Signify your agreement by aye. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, council, and thank you for everybody that hung in there in the public as well. Have a good rest of the evening.
Good night.
Good night.